Good afternoon, everyone. Before we proceed to our main topic, I would like to tell you facts about indigenous people. Indigenous people, we all know that IPs, or indigenous people, have rich in ancient cultures, and also but we need to know that they view their social, economic, environmental, and spiritual systems as interdependent. What does interdependent mean? Interdependent, it means every individual have connections to their economics, their environment where they live in, and where their livelihood came from. They believe that they are connected to spirits that guide them through their journey. The title of our topic that we will be discussing today is the National Commission on Indigenous People. And here I would like to read our objectives. At the end of the lesson, the students should be able to acquaint themselves on the agency assigned to protect the rights of indigenous people in the Philippines. I would like to read to you the short overview of our topic. The Philippines is home over 17 million indigenous people who make up 110 ethno-linguistic groups. Many of these 110 ethno-linguistic groups experience discrimination and often face exclusion or being excluded in a certain situation or activities that other Filipinos are joining. Also, they experience loss of ancestral lands. That is why they experience displacement and pressure to and destruction of traditional ways of life and practices and loss of identity and culture due to being discriminated all over the country. They forced to adapt or to live in a new ways of life. They forced to adapt in a certain life in today's life and they forced to change their way of life in order to survive. Indigenous communities tend to live in geographically isolated areas where they have retained much of their traditional culture and livelihood activities. Most of them nag-start sila sa mga indigenous people, nag-start sila sa isolated areas nga munakis alang makakadto dito ang mga doong sibilisasyon malayo sa ila sa mountains and also sa mga forests. They are mainly concentrated in northern Luzon, which took the 33% of the scale, and in Mindanao that measure up to 61%, and with some groups in Visayas area. It means mostly ang mga indigenous people is madamo sa Mindanao. Ang second one is madamo sila sa Luzon, and gamay lang sila diri sa mga nag-i-start sa Visayas. But like other indigenous communities around the world, they are consistently ranked among the poorest and most disadvantaged people in the world. Due to the fact that they being deprived from job opportunities or pinagkait sa kanila mga opportunities sa different jobs, many of them are unemployment or workers that have work but not that regular jobs. They are employed in less than full-time. Moreover, indigenous people are experiencing illiteracy or lacking ability to read and write. Muna ko reason nga man na-deprive sila sa mga job opportunities kay bisan mga mga tigulang na sila, mga old na sila, pero they don't have the ability to read and write. Kaya king pagkait gani sa ila ang malaya sila sa kabias na naging pagkait sila sa ila ang opportunities sa pag-istorila. Although their costumes and cultures may differ, indigenous people experience the same harsh reality issue or yung nang ilang pagiging hindi sila wala sige pagkaitan sila sa pag-eskwela mo na ang ginabuso ang sa mga state authorities na paginakuha ang ilang mga lands. Indigenous human rights defenders are intimidated, attacked, and sometimes even killed, often with the support of the states. Mostly ang mga kaputan sa ilang mga agencies, mga gina-intimidate sila sa iban man ng mga dagkuman ng mga company or mga agency man kaya hindi gusto mong protektahan ang ilang rights. They are intimidated, kasi intimidate, they are also being attacked and isang ginapatay sila. Indigenous people are more likely to live in extreme poverty and suffer high rates of landlessness, malnutrition, and internal displacement than other groups. They often rank highest of prison inmates, illiteracy, and unemployment, while their life expectancy is up to 20 years, lower compared to non-indigenous people. To address challenges faced by IPs or indigenous people in the aftermath of the natural disaster, the government places an agency that will protect the rights of indigenous people. Here is the NCP, or what is NCIP? The NCIP, or the National Commission on Indigenous People, is the agency of the national government of the Philippines that is responsible for protecting the rights of indigenous people of the Philippines. This agency, the National Commission on Indigenous People, is the primary government agency that formulates and implements policies, plans, and programs for the recognition, promotion, and protection of the rights and well-being of IPs with due regard to the ancestral beliefs and lands, self-governance and development, social justice, and human rights and cultural identity. Silang agencies sila ang nagkakatupad sa mga rights sa indigenous people na sa mga indigenous people. Sila ang naghahatag sa recognition or pakita nila kung ano talaga ka-importante man ang indigenous people dito sa ating country. This agency have a mandate that they must perform. The mandate of NCIP is that shall protect and promote the interests and well-being of ICCs or national ICC or indigenous
related to them. So they suggest ang law that that the policies that can help these communities play a significant role in development of the nation. For example, ang CIP, may ara silang mga kailangan ng mga access para sa mga educational indigenous children. They can propose a policy that ensure equal educational opportunities for these children. Next is to request and engage the services work and expert from other agencies of government or employ private experts, consultants as may required in the pursuit of objectives. So basically, when it says request engagement services, the support from other government agencies it means that the organization is responsible of development of ICCS. And pwede sila kapamangkon makapulik sa mga experts ng mga different fields. To issue a certificate of ancestral land or domain title is it means is the organizational as the authority to provide a legal document and confirm the ownership lands or ang mga owner land rights of the indigenous cultural communities. And that's all. Next is
this is the continuation of the topic. So, subject to existing laws, the entire into contracts agreements arrangement with government for private agencies and entities as may be necessary to attain objectives of this act, and subject to the approval of the President to obtain loans from government lending institution and other lending institution to finance its program. So, the related authority negotiate for funds and accept granting from including the gifts and properties from various sources, both local and international. However, the approval of the President of the Philippines is required for this action to take place. This provision ensures that the President has oversight and control over the acceptance of funds and gifts or properties behalf of government. It is important to note that without further context, it is difficult to provide a more specific interpretation. And the restriction on accepting funds, grants, donation, and properties by indigenous people in the Philippines in the context of the regulations and processes in place to ensure these funds and donation are used in a good way and aligns with the objectives and needs of indigenous communities. The National Commission of Indigenous People or NCIP in the Philippines plays a crucial role in overseeing and approving such as transaction involving the funds and donation received are utilized in manner that respect the rights, culture, and aspiration of the indigenous communities. So next is to negotiate our funds and accept grants, donation, gifts, and properties, whatever from foreign and from whatever source, local, international, subject the approval of President of the Philippines and benefit of ICCs, IPs, and administered same in accordance with the term thereof or in the absence of any conditions such as manner consistent with the interest of ICCs, IPs, as well as international. So in the Philippines, there have several laws and policies that do attain to support the objectives of the President obtaining loans from government lending institutions to finance programs related on indigenous people. One of the key laws of indigenous people's right is IPRA of 1997. The laws recognizes and protects the rights of Indigenous peoples, including their right with governance and social domain, culture integrity, and social justice. The IPRA provides the framework for the government to collaborate with the Indigenous communities with development and implementation of programs that promote their well-being and address their specific needs. Additionally, the other laws of policies such as National Division of Indigenous Peoples Act further support the protection and advancement of Indigenous people rights that aim to ensure the loans obtained from the government lending institution are used to support sustainable development and empowerment of Indigenous communities. So next.
So next is to coordinate development programs and projects for the advancement of indigenous cultural communities or indigenous peoples, and to oversee the proper implementation thereof. So this means that the organization or body is responsible for organizing and managing programs and projects that aim to improve the condition of indigenous cultural communities or indigenous peoples. So they ensure that these initiatives are correctly executed, achieve their intended goals. So for example, they might coordinate a program to improve access to education for indigenous cultural communities or indigenous peoples. So overseeing the construction of schools, hiring of teachers, and provision of educational materials. The next is to convene periodic convention or assemblies of indigenous peoples to review, assess, as well as propose policies or plans. So this involves regularly gathering representatives or members of the indigenous peoples to discuss, evaluate, and suggest policies or plans. So this meeting serve as a platform for dialogue and decision-making on matters that affect the community. So for example, they might hold an annual convention where members of the indigenous cultural communities or indigenous peoples can discuss their experience, review the effectiveness or current policies, and propose new initiatives. So next is to advise the President of the Philippines on all matters relating to indigenous cultural communities or indigenous peoples, and to submit within 60 days after the close of each calendar year a report of its operation and achievements. So this point indicates that the organization or body acts as a consultant to the President on issues concerning the indigenous cultural communities or indigenous peoples. So they are also required to provide an annual report detailing their activities and accomplishments within 60 days after the end of each year. So for example, they might advise the President on the impact of a proposed law on indigenous cultural communities or indigenous peoples and submit a report outlining the programs they have implemented and their outcomes. The next is to submit to Congress appropriate legislative proposal intended to carry out the policies under this to prepare and submit the appropriate budget to the office of the President. So this means that the organization or body is responsible for proposing suitable legislative measures to Congress that will help implement the policies. They have established, they are also tasked with preparing and presenting a budget proposal to the office of the President for approval. So for example, they might propose a bill that protects the land rights of indigenous cultural communities or indigenous peoples and prepare a budget that includes the necessary funding for its implementation. So this is the end of my report. Once again, good afternoon.